You know, usually when we talk about diving into a massive action RPG, especially something as notoriously deep and like intricate as Path of Exile 2, there's this immediate expectation that you need an advanced degree in mathematics just to survive the tutorial.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, like you open up the skill tree for the first time and it literally looks like a map of the cosmos. Suddenly you're pulling up, 3 different spreadsheets, watching 4 different tutorial videos, and sweating over what kind of virtual pants you should wear just to step outside the town gates.
Yeah, the genre is practically built on that feeling of overwhelming complexity. I mean, going all the way back to the early days of action RPGs, the core loop has always been about balancing offensive output against these really intricate defensive layers. You are constantly juggling elemental resistance caps, armor scaling, evasion ratings, and just hyper-specific gear crafting. And for a huge portion of the player base, that transition from simply finishing the main story campaign into the actual endgame mapping system, it's just a massive, unforgiving brick wall.
Well, that is exactly the wall we are tearing down today. Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to unpack this specific, highly talked about setup that feels like it just breaks all the conventional rules.
It really does.
We're talking about the Real Asian Robot Mercenary Starter build. And what makes this so fascinating to me is the bold claim attached to it. The creator promises this top-tier, completely stress-free endgame mapping experience with zero complex crafting.
Zero, which is wild.
Right. We are talking about running the hardest content in the game, using basically the random mismatched gear you found lying on the dirt during the campaign.
Which, to anyone who has spent hundreds of hours in these types of games, it sounds completely counterintuitive. It almost sounds like a trick.
Yeah.
So it is crucial to clarify up front who this strategy is actually designed for. If you're a hardcore veteran player looking for a build with a billion hyper-specific crafting requirements, you can just walk into a boss arena, press one button, and instantly vaporize the entire screen.
Like the Ultra Min-Maxers.
Exactly. This strategy isn't for you.
This is for you, the learner, the beginner, or really anyone who just feels a deep sense of anxiety when facing that endgame transition. Think of this as your survival blueprint. So instead of building a fragile, high-performance sports car that requires constant agonizing tuning in the garage just to keep the engine running, we're essentially looking at a reliable tank that runs on regular gas.
A tank on regular gas is the perfect analogy. But the engineering behind that tank is where things get truly subversive.
Okay.
Because the foundation of this build's reliability isn't actually raw, unadulterated defense. You aren't stacking layers of impenetrable steel armor or, building a massive health pool.
Wait, really? Because usually tank implies getting hit and just shrugging it off.
Right. But here, the secret sauce is a fascinating mastery of crowd control. It's about manipulating the game's mechanics so the enemy simply isn't allowed to initiate an attack in the first place.
Oh, wow. Okay, let's unpack that because it leads us right into the core engine of the build. It's the ultimate safety net. We're moving from the promise of easy survival to the mechanical reality of how you actually survive.
Exactly.
And it all hinges on a very specific choice you make in Act 3 regarding your ascendancy, which, for those who might be new to the terminology, is essentially your character's specialized subclass. So you intentionally drop a node called Unleash Hell, and you pick up one called Right Where We Want Them.
Yeah. And the name of that node is incredibly literal. What Right Where We Want Them does is fundamentally alter your damage output.
How so?
It ensures that all projectile damage, which, for a crossbow-wielding mercenary, makes up basically every single attack you do, it builds up a status effect on the enemy known as pin.
And the source material is very explicit on what pinned means. It doesn't mean they are just slowed down. It means the enemy cannot perform any actions whatsoever. They just stand there, completely frozen.
Yeah, that complete action denial is the linchpin of the entire strategy.
I have to push back on this a little bit, though. Because action RPGs are famous for their hidden immunities and diminishing returns, right? The prevailing logic is that you can't just stunlock the hardest content in the game.
Generally, yes.
So are you seriously saying we can just hit a freeze frame button on literally everything? Like, what about the massive endgame bosses that take up half the screen?
The documentation on this build leaves no room for ambiguity at all. The pin mechanic works on bosses.
That is insane.
It really is. It acts as the absolute ultimate form of crowd control. And if we zoom out and look at how the mercenary class is designed from the ground up, you start to see why relying on this mechanic is so brilliant.
Okay, I'm listening.
The mercenary simply does not possess the inherent heavy armor scaling of a melee class like the warrior. If you try to stand toe-to-toe with an endgame boss and trade physical blows,
You'll just get flattened into a pancake.
that is the usual outcome, yeah. To survive that inherent squishiness, players are typically forced into incredibly complex, expensive crafting loops to build artificial defensive layers on their gear.
Right, the spreadsheet math we talked about earlier.
Exactly. But by utilizing the pin mechanic instead, you are engaging in active mitigation. You aren't surviving because you have a massive health pool to absorb the hit. You are surviving because the boss is physically barred from executing its attack animation.
Wow.
Yeah. Outsourcing your defense to the enemy's inability to move is what allows this build to push into endgame mapping without needing highly crafted, perfect defensive gear.
That is wild. You are entirely neutralizing the threat before the math of an attack even calculates. Okay, so we have them pinned, the screen is frozen, but we still have to, actually kill them.
Minor detail, but yes.
Right. And usually this is where builds get notoriously messy. You end up with an 8-button rotation that feels like you're playing a piano, constantly watching cooldown timers. But this setup aggressively streamlines the engine down to 2 basic distinct modes, map clearing and boss making.
Yeah, and that simplification happens right around Act 3. The creator actively encourages you to drop some of your early game crutch skills, specifically armor piercing and high velocity rounds, so you can focus your entire mental bandwidth on a highly efficient 2-button setup.
Let's look at the map clearing mode first, because the way the creator describes this, it's essentially a mob lawnmower. You are relying on a skill called galvanic shards, and the support gems you attach to it are what really make the engine hum, right? You link galvanic shards with double barrel, innervate, elemental armament, and fork.
Yeah, and the underlying logic of that specific gem combination is all about maximizing your projectile spread and your elemental coverage. The fork support gem is the critical component here.
Because it splits the shots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When your projectiles fork, they split upon impact and seek out multiple targets behind the first one. And because every single one of those split projectiles carries the pin effect, you are simultaneously applying that hard freeze to an entire sprawling crowd of enemies at once.
So you're locking down the entire visual real estate of the screen while dealing massive, sweeping area of effect damage.
Precisely.
It sounds beautiful, honestly, like casting a giant electrical net over the battlefield. But then, we hit the boss at the end of the map, and the lawnmower isn't going to cut it against a single massive target.
Right, you need the nuke.
We need the nuke. And the source outlines a very specific, almost rhythmic sequence for this. First, you trigger a skill called Emergency Reload, which instantly powers up your ammunition. Then, you dump a skill called Storm Blast Bolts directly onto the boss. These bolts are supported by Lightning Attunement, Concentrated Area, Elemental Armament, and Lightning Penetration.
And that combination pivots your damage profile from wide area crowd control to focused, single-target devastation. You are actively stripping away their elemental resistances and concentrating the lightning damage into a tight, highly lethal cluster right at their feet.
But here is where it gets incredibly interesting to me. You don't just leave those lightning bolts there to do their thing. You have to toss an explosive grenade to manually detonate them.
That's the trigger.
Right. And the source documentation stresses a crucial, non-negotiable nuance here. The grenade must use the Short Fuse 2 support gem. Now, looking at the actual stats provided, Short Fuse 2 actually reduces the base damage of your explosive grenade.
It does.
In a game genre that is entirely obsessed with maximizing damage output at all costs, why on earth would we intentionally equip a gem that nerfs our own grenade?
That's a great question. And this specific interaction highlights a major trap that countless players fall into.
What's that?
Chasing the highest theoretical damage number on every individual skill without understanding how the damage is actually delivered in practice. See, the explosive grenade in this boss nuking sequence is not your primary damage dealer.
Oh, the Storm Blast bolts are doing the heavy lifting.
Exactly that. The explosive grenade is merely the trigger mechanism. What Short Fuse 2 does is aggressively cut the grenade's detonation fuse time by a massive 80%.
Oh.
Yeah, it turns a delayed explosive into an almost instantaneous blast.
I see where this is going.
Because without Short Fuse 2, you toss the grenade and the fuse slowly ticks down. In that 2 or 3 second window, a fast-moving boss, especially if they haven't been fully pinned yet, can simply take 3 steps to the left and walk out of the blast radius.
Oh, man. Yeah.
If that happens, all those highly damaging Storm Blast bolts you carefully lay down at their feet are completely wasted. The theoretical damage was high, but the effective applied damage is 0.
So this is a calculated tactical trade-off. You sacrifice a completely negligible amount of the grenade's base damage in exchange for guaranteed instantaneous detonation of your primary nuke.
Exactly.
It's the difference between setting a clumsy bear trap that the enemy can just step over and planting a landmine that goes off the millisecond you press the button.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Okay, so the logic is bulletproof. We have the ultimate safety net with the pin mechanic, and we have this highly efficient two-button engine for clearing crowds and nuking bosses. But to make that rotation fluid, and specifically to stack that pin effect fast enough before a boss can even react, you desperately need attack speed.
Yes, attack speed is the vital lubricant that allows this entire mechanical engine to function. If you shoot too slowly, the boss gets an attack off before the pin threshold is reached.
But again, the entire premise of this deep dive is the zero investment promise. We are not doing complex crafting. We aren't spending hours at a workbench re-rolling the stats on our gloves to get a 5% attack speed increase.
No, not at all.
So how do we get massive, game-changing speed early on without relying on our gear? This brings us to what might be my favorite part of the entire strategy. It's the Troubled Camp exploit.
Yeah, calling it an exploit almost does a disservice to how clever a use of game mechanics it is, honestly.
Yeah.
In Act 3, specifically in the Infested Barren Zone, there is a very targeted strategy you employ.
Okay, walk me through it.
First, you acquire the Tame Beast skill, which you pull from an uncut gem. Then you head to a specific geographic area on the map called the Troubled Camp, where the game guarantees that two rare, powerful monsters will spawn.
And you are playing bouncer here, right? You are hunting for a very specific VIP. You are looking for a dire tusk spore that has organically spawned with a haste aura modifier.
The strategy hinges entirely on finding that specific modifier. But, the game's randomness means you won't always get it on the first try.
Right.
If the boar spawns without the haste aura, or worse, if the game spawns an antlion, which the creator explicitly warns against taming because their AI causes them to constantly roll away from you and break your tether.
Oh, yeah, you don't want that.
You don't just sigh and keep playing the campaign. You pause the game and select the respawn at checkpoint option in the menu. This effectively resets the rare monster spawns at the camp without forcing you to run through the entire map all over again.
Oh, that's smart.
You simply cycle this reset process until the haste aura boar appears.
It's basically save scumming for the perfect pet. I love this so much. It's like capturing a pocket caffeine machine that just blindly follows you around and makes you shoot faster.
That's exactly what it is.
But let's be practical for a second. We are capturing a beast from Act 3. We are eventually taking this thing into endgame Tier 4 maps against cosmic horrors. Does the boar just die instantly the second an endgame boss looks at it?
The documentation is very transparent about this. The boar will absolutely die, and it will die frequently.
Well, that's a problem, isn't it?
Not really. The inherent beauty of the Tame Beast skill is that it creates a persistent, tethered minion. When the boar inevitably dies to a massive boss attack, you do not have to travel back to Act 3 to capture another one. It automatically revives right next to you after a short built-in cooldown.
So it's like immortal-ish. It's an infinitely regenerating meat shield.
Yes. And it serves two massive, build-defining functions while it is alive. First, as you mentioned, it acts as a decoy, drawing aggro and tanking a surprising amount of lethal damage that was meant for you.
Yeah.
Second, and far more importantly, as long as your character remains within a 4-meter radius of the boar, its haste aura grants you a staggering 20% attack speed buff.
Wow. A flat 20% attack speed increase in an ARPG is a huge endgame level multiplier. Getting that for free in Act 3 is absurd.
And the mechanical synergy actually goes a layer deeper.
Oh, really?
Yeah. On your passive skill tree, you are instructed to specifically grab a node called Presence. What Presence does is grant you a flat percentage increase to your attack damage simply for having your beast companion physically present on the battlefield.
You're kidding.
Nope. So this single boar, which you essentially tricked the game's spawning mechanics into giving you, is simultaneously providing a massive attack speed steroid, a flat overall damage buff, and physically soaking up enemy attacks.
And the only real cost to keeping this boar around is managing your spirit meter, right? Like, the creator makes a very specific point about capturing the boar only after you fight the boss named Ignug.
Yes, that's critical.
That way, your character has naturally gained enough base spirit to afford the boar's upkeep cost alongside your other essential auras.
Exactly. It is a phenomenal masterclass in extracting maximum sustained value from early game mechanics to effortlessly carry your character through the endgame transition.
So to recap the journey so far, we have our crowd control handled by the pin mechanic. We have our damage engine handled by the 2-button Galvanic and Stormblast rotation. And we have our attack speed handled by our Pocket Caffeine Bore.
That's the trifecta.
Now we have to talk about the reality of the equipment, because the boldest claim this entire setup makes is the zero investment promise. The creator is showing footage of running Tier 4 endgame maps wearing basic campaign gear. How is that mathematically possible when the enemies are hitting that hard?
It all comes down to incredible efficiency with how you manage your passive buffs. This shifts the burden of power away from your armor and onto your skill tree.
Okay, break that down for me.
Once your mercenary hits level 60, you unlock your third major ascendancy power jump. To do this, you complete the Trial of the Cycnus, which is basically a specialized in-game gauntlet that tests your build. Upon completion, you are rewarded with a Jin Baria.
A Jin Baria.
Yes, this is a unique type of relic that holds your new power, and the specific power you select from this relic is a node called a Solid Plan.
A solid plan. I love the naming conventions, but mechanically, what does that node actually do for us?
It permanently halves the spirit reservation cost of all your buff skills.
Oh, wow, half.
Half. This single node is the turning point for your total gear independence. Usually in Path of Exile 2, powerful auras require you to reserve a huge chunk of your spirit. Think of it like a pie chart where the aura permanently eats up half the pie, leaving you with very little energy to actually use your attacks.
Right.
Because a solid plan cuts those costs in half, you can suddenly run 3 massive game-changing buffs simultaneously. Herald of Thunder, Herald of Ash, and Wind Dancer.
So instead of needing gear that gives you lightning damage, fire damage, and evasion, you are just magically layering all this free elemental damage and defensive evasion directly onto your character through these auras.
Exactly. And beyond the auras, there's another fascinating quirk hidden within the passive tree's code.
What's that?
The creator points out, and credits a viewer tip for this discovery actually, that passive skill nodes explicitly designed to buff two-handed melee weapons actually apply their full benefits to crossbows.
Wait, really? Because a crossbow is technically held in 2 hands, the game treats it like a giant battle axe.
Yes.
That is hilarious and amazing.
The underlying logic of the game engine categorizes weapons by grip type rather than just ranged versus melee. Because the crossbow occupies both hand slots, the code tags it as a two-handed weapon.
So it's like a loophole.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
This allows you to double dip into massive damage nodes that most ranged players wouldn't even realize are mathematically available to them. And because of these huge innate buffs, the actual gear checklist becomes almost absurdly simple.
Yeah, I'm looking at the gear section of our source material now, and it really is just a set of basic guidelines, not a shopping list.
Yeah.
It says, find the crossbow with the highest base damage you can, prioritizing lightning or physical damage. For your helmet, your belts, and your rings, you literally just look at whatever drops on the ground and check if it has maximum life and if it helps push your elemental resistances as close to the 75% cap as possible.
That's it. There is zero complex crafting required. No spending hours at a workbench.
Yeah.
If a piece of armor drops from a random monster and it has some health and a fire resistance stat, you put it on and you keep running.
The only strict gear rule I see here is regarding the boots. You must prioritize maximum movement speed on your boots above absolutely everything else.
Yes, that is non-negotiable.
Which actually leads me to my biggest question about this whole setup. This sounds incredibly accessible, a true zero investment dream for a beginner. But let's be entirely realistic for a moment.
Let's do it.
If we are running Tier 4 endgame maps, facing down screen-size bosses, and we are wearing a random letter belt we found 3 acts ago, what is the catch? We cannot just stand there and face tank everything, right? There has to be a moment where the math catches up with us.
The math absolutely catches up with you. And the source material provides a very sobering reality check during a demonstration of a boss fight against Count Lock Lava Gun.
Oh, okay.
This boss arena is filled with environmental hazards, massive area of effect lava explosions, and rapid attacks. The catch is that while the build brilliantly handles the complex damage and crowd control math for you, you still have to play mechanically well.
So the build gives you the tools, but it doesn't play the game for you.
Exactly. As the creator explicitly states while dodging lava blasts, you cannot perfectly evade everything through stats alone. And because you are relying on basic campaign gear with low inherent armor, one-shots will kill you instantly.
Yikes.
Yeah. If Count Lock Lavagun's major wind-up attack connects with your character, your health pool will just evaporate. The screen goes gray.
So what is the actual moment-to-moment strategy? If we can't take a solid hit, and we're relying heavily on the pin mechanic to freeze them, but a boss has a split-second immunity phase or manages to get a massive attack animation off, what do we actually do?
This is exactly why maximum movement speed on the boots is the single most important stat on your entire character sheet.
Okay.
The moment-to-moment strategy is to play the absolute outer perimeter of the screen. You use that movement speed to constantly and aggressively reposition. You are firing your Stormblast bolts from maximum visual distance and timing your explosive grenade detonations carefully so you never, ever have to step into the boss's immediate danger zone.
You're kiting them. You're constantly walking them backward while laying down a minefield.
Exactly. You are relying entirely on manual evasion. You have to actively watch the boss's physical animations and physically move your character model out of the way of the swing.
Wow.
The pin mechanic makes the game incredibly forgiving. It actively stops 90% of the threats before they even begin. But that remaining 10%, the massive telegraphed boss wind-up attacks, you have to respect them and you have to dodge them. It is an incredibly powerful starter build, but it demands constant situational awareness.
So to wrap this all up and bring it back to what this means for you diving into the game tonight, the Real Asian Robot Mercenary build essentially democratizes the Path of Exile to Endgame experience.
It really does.
It takes the terrifying Cosmos-sized spreadsheet and just throws it out the window. By relying on the pin mechanic to stop enemies from attacking, by using a streamlined galvanic and stormblast rotation for easy damage, and by cleverly capturing that haste bore for an attack speed engine, literally anyone can transition smoothly into endgame maps.
Yeah.
Don't need millions of gold. You don't need a PhD in crafting mechanics. You just need to keep your distance, respect the boss animations, and push your buttons.
It really is a masterclass in utilizing hidden mechanics and clever interactions over raw, brute force numbers. And if we connect this specific build to the broader picture of how the genre is evolving, it leaves us with a really fascinating concept to chew on.
What's that?
Think about this. If one of the most effective, stress-free starter builds in arguably the most notoriously complex ARPG on the market, relies heavily on mechanical crowd control, manual dodging, and clever monster capturing, rather than just rolling the highest possible defensive stats on a piece of gear, what does that tell us about the evolving design philosophy of action RPGs?
That's a great point.
Are we finally moving past the era where pure spreadsheet math dictates whether you live or die? Are we entering an era where clever tactics, spatial positioning, and deep mechanical synergies truly reign supreme?